Good afternoon. So I have calmed down from yesterday's bad call. And what I'm very happy about is today I was listening to Sports Talk Radio, and that was not the primary discussion. It was mentioned very briefly, and then it led to the topic of the Seattle Seahawks offensive line. So very happy that, very, very happy that that is not being blown up. And I'll just leave it at that. Okay, so believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, the Seattle Seahawks are 25% through the 2015-2016 NFL season. So now we are going into the second quarter of the season in this Week 5 matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals. Before we break down this game, I want to say I do have a small announcement. Due to my schedule, I actually will be attempting to do the comment video on Sunday night after the Seattle Seahawks play. Then I will recap the game, or attempt to recap the game on Monday night, followed by a preview of the Carolina Panthers game on Tuesday of next week. Why is that? It's because I'm actually going out of town. I'm going to be watching football, but I'm going to be cheering on the Montana State Bobcats. My brother goes there. We go to a game every single year, so I'll be wearing this shirt. And they don't have red Solo cups. Apparently, they give out these. They did it one year. They gave out these what they like to call it blue Bobcat cups, and then they had a parody of the Red Solo Cup song on with everybody having a couple beers. So that was. I don't necessarily know if they do that every single year, but that was fun. So I actually will be heading out of town, and I will probably miss the majority of this game as well, because I will spend the majority of the second half in the up in the air in an airplane. But I will attempt to watch as much as I can of the first half. We'll see how it goes. So that's the reason why we have this schedule. So still kind of have this weird schedule because of my schedule, not because of the Seahawks schedule, because they play Monday night. Okay, so there are two things that we have learned in the first 4 games of the Seattle Seahawks season. And the first one is, I think it's a given, is the offensive line is becoming a major issue. And that might be the understatement of the season, unless the Seahawks can get their act together and try to put together a team, a line that can actually protect Russell Wilson and company, so that way Russell Wilson actually has time to throw the ball. But since everybody seems to be talking about that, all the, ESPN Seattle, all the little media outlets, conversations on Facebook, I'm going to have that conversation later, because I am going to attempt to give you something new. That's one of the things that I attempt to do when I've been recapping and previewing these games. So that's the first thing we've learned. The offensive line is becoming an issue. The second thing, the Seattle Seahawks, if there's anything we've learned, is that right now they can win on the road, but they can't win on the road. 0-2 on the road, 2-0 at home. And I bring this up because originally I didn't think this would be too big a deal, because you know how you look at an NFL schedule, you say, okay, well, that's a loss, we're probably going to struggle against them, that's a win, I really thought after the first 2 weeks of the season, at the beginning of the year, the Seattle Seahawks would start to win games and start winning in quote-unquote dominant fashion, because you can make a case for every single game that we play until, I don't know, maybe Dallas at that point, just because Pete Carroll's never won in Dallas, and I can't even remember the last time the Seahawks ever actually won in Dallas. That you can make a case why the Seahawks would win all the games coming up until then. The problem is, though, is that the schedule is actually getting a lot harder on paper than it was going into the season. Our next 2 opponents, Cincinnati and Carolina, in that order, are in the ranks of undefeated, and I don't think anybody expected that. You might expect the 2 teams to at least be competitive, maybe 3-1, but I don't think that anybody expected both the Bengals and the Panthers to be 4-0, leading their divisions respectively. I was not expecting an article on ESPN.com presenting the idea that the Cincinnati Bengals could challenge the New England Patriots and Denver Broncos for the AFC Championship. And I think that is a little far-fetched, but we will talk about that as we move forward. And another reason why the schedule is becoming harder is if you look at all of the Seattle Seahawks road games thus far, they have all been against potential playoff teams. St. Louis beat the Arizona Cardinals last week, so now they're 2-2, right back into the thick of things. They're second in the division because they beat the Seahawks, so right now they have the tiebreaker against the Hawks. And right now, it could either go either way, where some experts think that they are going to win 10 and 11 games, get that 6 seed, or there are, and then of course there's everybody else, all the Seahawks fans at least, who think and hope that they will go 7-9, just be a thorn in the Seahawks side and the NFC West side. So the St. Louis Rams are back in the thick of things. Some experts like ESPN and Sports Illustrated who predicted them to go to the playoffs. Then you got Green Bay. I mean, Green Bay is on a mission this year. I don't know if I've said it, but they're actually my NFC pick this year to go to the Super Bowl. So they're on a mission. And then you got Cincinnati. Now, Cincinnati, overall, in my opinion, and if there are any Bengal fans who come across this, I'm not trying to put down your team. So if I say something that you think is incorrect or you disagree with, please let me know. We'll be more than welcome to listen. But here's the deal. When you think of the AFC North division, recently you have a hardcore defensive rivalry between the Ravens and Steelers. We all know the Cleveland Browns are going to be at the bottom of the division every year until something goes right. I don't know, maybe... Anyway, they're the Cleveland Browns. Sorry, Bill Brasky. And then you got Cincinnati. And Cincinnati either hangs around, the division, maybe once in a while defeats the Ravens and Steelers, and then slowly but surely maybe gets into the playoffs as a wild card team. And then they lose in the first round. And then there are some years where they shock everybody, where they hang around and then they get a couple key victories at the end of the year, they clinch the division, and then they lose in the first round of the playoffs. So, I mean... They unfortunately, I forgot the name of the Cincinnati head coach. I'm actually surprised he still has his job because he's the longest tenured coach in the NFL, yet he has no playoff victories. He doesn't have any. So I'm just kind of curious on why that is. He's obviously a good coach because I remember when I first was introduced to the NFL in the mid-'90s, Cincinnati was a joke. Not so much now. Now the question is, and the reason why I bring this up, anybody who's coming across this, because I've always looked at the Ravens and Steelers as being, the two teams that are always going to duke it out to win the division and win one of those wild card spots. Pittsburgh and the Ravens winning Super Bowls throughout the last decade as well, and going to Super Bowls throughout the last decade. So the question right now remains for the Cincinnati Bengals, despite being 4-0. The question is are they for real? And I think you could be a little skeptical with this. As much, because I haven't seen them play, but based on what the stats show me, what the stats tell me, this game is a big game for the Bengals because it would show the National Football League that, yes, you are going to have to contend with Cincinnati later on in the season because they would be 5-0. We'll talk more about that later. But not only would they be 5-0, they probably would be taking down a legitimate opponent as in the Seattle Seahawks. Right now, the Seattle Seahawks got off to a slow start. Now they're back at 500. Very, very close to getting out of the hole they dug at the beginning of the season, which is good. But at the end of the day, they're the defending NFC champs. They are the two-time defending NFC champion, and they are 2 years away from a Super Bowl year. So if Cincinnati beats the Hawks, this is a very big game for them because it will show the NFL that Cincinnati is for real. Because, I'm sorry, these wins do not impress me. Okay, you got the Cincinnati, not in this order, has played their majority of games against the AFC West. And the AFC West has not been known for, a big-time division anymore, mainly because of Peyton Manning and company with Denver. But not in this order, so not necessarily in this order. So they defeated the Oakland Raiders. Ooh. The Oakland Raiders are not scaring anybody. The fact that at this point that the Oakland Raiders actually have 2 wins and they won 2 games in a row is astonishing. Nobody saw that. I mean, nobody saw them beating the Ravens. Absolutely nobody saw that. Some people could have called that the upset of the week when the Raiders beat the Ravens. So then they defeat the San Diego Chargers. Okay, you can kind of make a case that the Chargers are a good team to contend with, maybe a wild card team, but then you can also make the case that they're not so good because right now they're at 500 and they have a swing game coming up in their next game that will determine whether or not they get over or back under 500 again. So they too are kind of they're kind of iffy. Then you got the Kansas City Chiefs, 1-3. I rest my case. 1-3 football team. Congratulations, you defeated a team that is now 1-3, a quarter of the way through the NFL season. Which is why yesterday's game against the Detroit Lions for the Seattle Seahawks was so important that the Hawks got that, so they wouldn't be dealing with that type of a record. It's very, very difficult to come back from a 1-3 record. Then you got the Ravens game, and that I think still remains to be seen. So I give credit to Cincinnati for beating the Ravens. The thing is, though, the Ravens are slumping for the first time under John Harbaugh. And they just came out and made a statement by beating Pittsburgh, again, without Ben Roethlisberger. So I think either the Ravens could either go one way or another way. So again, another skeptical win. Okay, so this team is 4-0 against quote-unquote weak opponents or opponents that no NFL team should lose to. So it's because of that why if they beat the Hawks, this will be a statement for them. Because then they can say, all right, well, they're playing the AFC West, so those wins outside of Denver, depending on what happens later in the year, that might be a given. But to beat the Ravens and the Seahawks, two very good defensive teams, that will scream out lights and make some noise around the NFL. So very important game for the Bengals. They are led by quarterback Andy Dalton. Right now, Andy Dalton this year has thrown... wrong line. I got two lines. I read the long line. All right, so this year he's thrown 9 touchdowns and 1 interception. That is absolutely outstanding. He's protecting the football. He's been able to get the ball around to his receivers quite cleanly. He's got a quarterback rating of 87.7. Not too shabby. He's also already thrown for over 1,000 yards. So the arsenal for the Cleveland, my fault. Cincinnati Bengals, very, very good. And one thing that does scare me about going into this game, not only the fact that it's on the road, but Andy Dalton, I did not know this. I had to look this up. Andy Dalton, I know this is against 2 different types of teams and 2 different time periods in the Pete Carroll era, but Andy Dalton actually has defeated the Seahawks. And not only has he defeated the Seahawks, he's defeated the Seahawks at home. In that game in 2010, which was the Tavares, not 2010, 2011, excuse me, which was the Tavares Jackson year. He threw 2 touchdowns, did throw 2 interceptions, but he threw for 168 yards, completed 18 of his 29 attempts in a 34-12 victory over the Seahawks in Seattle. So, in that regard, that kind of scares me. The reason why, even though the majority of those players are no longer with the team or they have different roles, like Tavares Jackson is the backup quarterback now for the Seattle Seahawks, for example, that shows that he's got film on a Pete Carroll style of play. And he can look at that and use it to his advantage. The other guy the Seahawks have to watch out for is the wide receiver known as A.J. Green. For the season, he has caught 3 touchdowns. He has 25 receptions. He's been targeted 35 times, so he's only missed the ball 10 times. He's ran for 417 passing yards. Get this, he averages 16.7 yards per catch. That's way over a first down. So we got to watch out for him. He also has a long of 80 yards. So we are going to be dealing with a very high-profile offense in Cincinnati. Now, another fun fact about the Cincinnati Bengals is that they have a chance to do something that no AFC North team has ever done ever since the division was created in 2002, and that is go 5-0. Now, another key stat with the 5-0 record, outside of they will now probably be looked at as for real. And to start out 5-0 in the AFC North, the Bengals have started 5-0 twice in their franchise history. It happened in 1975 and 1988. In 1988, they went to the Super Bowl. So there's a 50-50 shot that if this team wins against the Seahawks, on Sunday, that this team could potentially go to the Super Bowl, just based on the history of this franchise. So that is a look at the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, going into the Seattle Seahawks side, as we mentioned before, the offensive line, again, that's a given. I'm not going to dissect that. Again, you can turn on ESPN Seattle, 710 ESPN Seattle on the radio, and you can hear them talk about ad nauseum how poor the offensive line is played. So I'm going to skip that part. But this just broke about 2 hours ago. Fred Jackson, the Seattle Seahawks third-string running back, has now been diagnosed with a high ankle sprain. So right now, as of right now, depending on whether or not he's questionable, doubtful, or probable to start on Sunday, the Seahawks now have Thomas Rawls as the only healthy running back going into this game against Cincinnati. Now, Pete Carroll came out today and said he is optimistic that Marshawn Lynch is going to be ready to play this game on Sunday after sitting out the Monday Night Football game. Okay, that's great. But if we don't have an offensive line, it's not going to make a difference, because Marshawn Lynch is going to attempt to come back from 2 weeks of very little play against competition. We may or may not have Fred Jackson, our third string, which means we're going to be depending on a rookie who's had one good game, one poor game. So with our running game in the mix, it's going to be a very shaky day for Russell Wilson and company in the offense. Keys to the game. I think this game will be all about which defense cracks. Because if you look at the defense, Cincinnati gives up 19.2 points per game, which is ninth in the NFL overall. Seattle gives up 17.8 points a game, and that is tied for third overall in the NFL. So defense-wise, this game should be around a 2-point field goal range in terms of the spread. So now it comes time for my prediction. As much as I hate to say this, I'm going to go with Cincinnati. I'm going to go with Cincinnati because of two reasons. One, as I said before, Seattle has failed to win a road game. So until they start winning on the road, it's only a question of, okay, Seattle's probably going to win a road game this year. Who are they going to beat and where? And it isn't and that's the first reason. The second reason is, even though the defense on both teams is very good in terms of limiting points, Cincinnati averages 30.2 points a game. Okay, 30.2 points against skeptical opponents, but even so, they're known for their wide receivers, and Andy Dalton is a legitimate quarterback. Seattle scores based on their offensive woes. They score 21.8 points a game. So you have potentially a field goal win on defense for the Cincinnati Bengals, and if you were just to have offense, you have over a touchdown, just over a two-point possession game in favor of the Cincinnati Bengals. So that is the reason why I have the Cincinnati Bengals beating the Seattle Seahawks. But I've been wrong before, and I hope I am wrong. As I said before, when I predicted them to lose to the Packers, I hope that I am wrong, and I can come in next week and be, let's see, real quick. I'm sorry, I got the St. Louis one wrong, but then I got okay, I hope that I can come in 3-2. Right now, my predictions are at 3-1 on the season. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. Feel free to comment at any time, and I'll try to get the comment video filmed on Sunday night and get that uploaded as soon as possible, followed by the recap of the Sunday game on Monday, and then we'll take a look at the Carolina Panther game on Tuesday. So, thank you very much for watching, and go Hawks!